today, Susan Watkins is here, and she has also a very distinguished history and career in dietetics and diabetes education. She's a graduate of Kent State. She's a manager of the Nutrition and Education and Weight Management Program at St. Jude Heritage Medical Group. And she's also involved in the manager of a very innovative Healthy Concepts in Weight program for the St. Jude Heritage Medical Group. She has written many articles about this subject on nutrition and diabetes. She's given many programs to medical groups, to hospitals, on diabetes, nutrition, and weight management. And she's here today to talk to us about that subject. So please welcome Susan Watkins. Susan?
Thank you. I'm going to move this. All right, I'll take that. Hi. So I'm going to just kind of explain what this first slide here is, who we are in the community. So I work for Heritage, which is Jude, Joe's, and Mission Medical Group. So we have locations all across. You could see Brea, Diamond Bar, Garden Grove, Yorba Linda, Orange. So kind of spreading across the community. And we do have a weight program. I'll kind of explain how that came about, a structured, medically supervised weight program, because we found it was really difficult to see patients once a month and really see changes in weight, especially patients that already had a lot of medical health problems. So we decided to create or adopt a very structured weight program, which we've had for about 10 years. And now Providence, who we've partnered with, St. Joseph Health has now adopted this program as well. So there's programs across Northern California opening up as part of St. Joseph Providence Medical Group. So you'll probably be hearing the HMR weight program a little bit more in the years to come, because it's kind of a growing program that's taking place. So let's go to, and this is just different programs we offer. So weight management is obviously, I feel like it hits almost every condition that we see. So we see patients for diabetes, gut problems, renal disease, cholesterol, heart disease, hypertension, and for a lot of those conditions, if we could get somebody to lose weight, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, but even really small amounts of weight, 5 to 6% of the body weight, makes really significant medical changes. So sometimes people think, gosh, I've struggled all my life. There's no way I'm going to get to an ideal body weight or what my ideal body weight should be. And we're finding you don't really have to, but even for some people, losing that 7-8 pounds makes a huge difference in their medical risk factors. So we always start there, and then for some people, we find, oh wow, we could get them closer to their goal. So one of the things our department does is when a patient is in the hospital for something, they may get education. Maybe someone's diagnosed with diabetes in the hospital and they get some education, but it's more survival skills. At that point, patients are not really ready to learn. They're not feeling well. The person doesn't have a lot of time, the educator, with the patient. So it's more kind of helping them with survival skills. But now, once they leave the hospital, is that better? Once they leave the hospital, then they really need to get outpatient help. So that's where our department comes along. And diabetes, for an example, we want patients to have 9 hours of education in that first year of being diagnosed. And that's what Medicare actually covers, because we find that's as much hours as it takes to start having the patient be able to manage their own condition. And that's really what it's all about. I'll have a lot of doctors say, oh, what handout do you give for diabetes? What handout do you give for cholesterol? And I always cringe, because I'm like, there's not just like one handout that's going to change somebody's life. It's more about teaching people how to manage their own condition. And that's really what we try to do in any of the programs that we're working with patients on. And I always say people don't know what they don't know. So sometimes we think, oh, they've had diabetes for a while, they just don't want to do it. But a lot of times when we get people in, there's a lot of gaps and areas that they really don't know, and they didn't know they didn't know. So they thought, oh, I don't need to go to that because I already know everything. But then they find, oh, wow, there is a lot of things I really didn't know about my condition. And that's kind of what we want to do, is bridge that gap. And I wanted to show this. This is an example of how we teach our diabetes classes. Instead of kind of like what I'm doing now, is standing up and just lecturing, where some of you may be, thinking about what you're going to do later, not listening. This is a way to engage the patients, because it's 2-hour-long classes each week, 4 in a row. That's a lot. That's a lot of paying attention. So the classes are interactive. There's a map, everybody sits around the map. For each session, there's a different map with different topics. There's cards for high and low blood sugar. And instead of me just saying, what causes high blood sugar, what causes low blood sugar, I have the group answer it first. And then if somebody in the group is not getting it correctly, then I will chime in as the facilitator. So even though I know the answer, I'm not going to jump in, because it's better peer-to-peer that they're teaching each other. So it's really neat to watch it, because there's people in the group that know a lot more than other people, and then they engage in conversation. And usually when we engage in conversation, we end up learning things a lot better than if we just listen and have to just not speak. So we like to teach in that format, and it really helped our drop rates as well. So people tend to stay in the whole 8 hours of program, 9-hour program, versus before we had more dropouts. So that's kind of a new way of educating, and we're trying to do that more and more in our programs. Oh, and if you have questions and it's related to what I'm talking about, feel free to raise your hand. If it's something at the end, I'll be here too to answer questions as well, or something maybe I didn't touch on that you wanted to talk about. So now I'm going to get into weight management and kind of start with where are we at in our country with weight, and how are we doing so far, and what are some of the barriers? Because I think even people that are not overweight, a lot of us, there's still a lot of challenges and barriers to eating healthy in our culture. So for people age 20 and over, it's about 71% are either overweight or obese. So, and it's about 39% are obese. So that means only about 30% of our population are of a normal weight. So it's actually more abnormal to be of a normal weight now. And this next cartoon kind of shows you this, the normalizing of overweight. Kids don't stare, they're staring at the normal weight person because it's like weird now. And so that's kind of where we're going. And if we don't make big changes, I feel like that's what's happening. So it's predicted that half of all US adults will be obese in 10 years, 2030. So right now it's almost 40%, so that's only really 10% more if we keep going in the route we're going. And severely obese are the fastest rising group of overweight Americans. And I was talking to Dr. Lawton we were talking about children. We see a lot more children that were overweight, when most of us, when we were younger, it was more abnormal. And now it's pretty normal for kids to be overweight, and we're seeing kids with fatty liver, kids with high cholesterol, kids with type 2 diabetes, which we didn't used to see that type of diabetes in children. And then there's also a rise in the elderly population with obesity rates as well. So, and it's kind of interesting when they've done surveys, even though the average weight has risen, when they interview people, most feel like, yeah, I've dropped a few pounds, I'm doing pretty good. So we're kind of like in denial a little bit, because I think it is so normal. And most people don't accurately describe themselves as obese. I know when patients say their doctor, or they see the diagnosis in there, they're mad. They're like, it said obese, because that word just sounds very negative. And I don't feel like it's anything to be ashamed of. I feel like it's a result, and we're going to talk about our environment and our culture. And most of us do need support around it, or we end up going that route. Oh, so this one, it talks about, so because of people's weight is rising, what is this doing to our health? So this is really affecting all of these conditions that we see in our department. Like I said, most of the conditions that we see, if we get some weight loss, it makes a big difference. And even if someone's not super overweight, if they're a little bit overweight, especially if you carry it in the middle, that tends to increase your risk for a lot of diseases or conditions. So this was a really interesting review of 19 long-term studies that followed 1.46 million people and found that every rise in BMI raises the risk of disease and death. So BMI of 25 to 29, so that's the overweight category. Anything under 25, 20 to 25 or 19 to 25 is considered normal. So as soon as it gets into that overweight range from normal weight, it increases your risk of death by 13%. As it gets into the obesity range, it bumps up even more. Severely obese, you could see how dramatic the risk of death is at that point when, you know, the weight is that high. So people are getting sicker as a result of our eating habits, our lifestyle. In the last 10 years, there's an increase of 25% for women, 19% for women, 15% for men that have 2 or more chronic health conditions. And I'm actually surprised, even when somebody's over 50 and they don't have any health conditions now. Even as a healthcare professional, you kind of get used to. People get a certain age and we're used to seeing a laundry list of medical conditions, which really shouldn't be. And a lot of those we could prevent. And there's an increase in heart disease risk with, you know, more heart disease as well with increasing of weights. So what's the cost of obesity for healthcare? The most costly 1% of people account for more than 20% of healthcare spending. So those 1% really sick people that have a huge laundry list of conditions are very costly. And so the question is, how many of those could be prevented or decrease those conditions that they have with a change in lifestyle? And we find, and I'm going to pass around a book in a little bit of some of our patients, and you could kind of see the dramatic changes in their body weight when they make lifestyle changes. So treatment needs to focus on lifestyle for those with chronic conditions, because the last thing somebody wants with a bunch of chronic conditions is for the doctor to tell them, hey, we're going to give you another pill. Because usually they're already taking so many pills. And they say once you get to too many pills, they start contradicting each other. So our goal would be, can we get you off some of those? Or at least stop adding more medications. And we see patients every day in our clinic that are coming off medications, and a lot of them coming off all their medications, which is pretty amazing, and it's a motivator for those patients to keep doing what they're doing because they're like, this is great, I don't have to take these medications anymore. So the US kind of underestimates the long-term cost of obesity. I do feel like this is getting a little bit better. More insurance companies are paying for patients to go through like diabetes programs, pre-diabetes now. I'll talk about that in a minute, how Medicare is now covering for a diabetes prevention program for pre-diabetics. So we are getting there slowly, but we still, you know, insurance will often pay for like bypass surgery, but not for a structured weight program. So, you know, we're hoping we could get there in the years to come. And then they're saying spending on obesity problems will increase 13 to 16% every year if we continue in the current trend that we're on. So this is a very interesting study that came out. You might have heard of it, the DPP, Diabetes Prevention Program. So there was a big clinical trial done. It was like 27 randomized trials that were done on taking people that had pre-diabetes and that were overweight at all, and looking at putting one group in an intense lifestyle program. One group took the diabetes medication metformin, one group did nothing. And they looked at what did this do? And what they found was it was very dramatic. Both the metformin medication actually decreased patients' risk of diabetes by, it was like 30-some%. But the people in the lifestyle group, if they lost, they found 5 to 6% of their body weight, which is kind of the gold standard in weight management. It reduced their risk of developing diabetes by 58%. Very dramatic. And it was so dramatic that Medicare, after the study came out, decided they were going to cover for these approved diabetes prevention programs for their Medicare patients to go through it. And it's a year-long program. So, which was pretty amazing, because usually insurance doesn't cover preventatively. They wait till people have diabetes and then cover the care. So that was huge kind of for prevention. So you'll start seeing these diabetes prevention programs. Some of them are in WISE, some of them are in healthcare outpatient organizations. But they have to have that seal, that diabetes prevention program, and be an approved program before they could be approved. But it's pretty dramatic. So 5 to 6% for somebody that weighs 200 pounds is only 10 to 12 pounds. So if you weigh less, it would be less than 10 pounds. So it wasn't a ton of weight, but it was enough weight where it decreased their risk of developing diabetes. And that's the thing, we don't really know. For one person, just being a little overweight will cause a lot of health problems. For somebody else, they have to gain 50 pounds before they have a lot of health problems. We don't know who that is, so the goal is everybody can be as healthy as they can so we could prevent any of these conditions from happening. And the great thing is we know it works. So if we had a 1% population-wide decrease in body weight, what would that do? That would decrease 2 million cases of diabetes, 1.5 million cases of heart disease, stroke, 100,000 cases of cancer. So it's pretty dramatic. And we find if we spend money on wellness programs, and a lot of companies now are investing in wellness programs. So I know our organization even paid us if our measures improved from last year, if we got our biometrics, our labs taken. And they weren't saying I had to be ideal body weight or the person next to me did, but they said, last year you were at this weight, and if it improves next year, you're gonna get healthcare dollars back. So that was a motivator. People that in my office that I didn't even think cared about it were now motivated because they were going to get some money too, right? So it did kind of incentivize people to get healthy. So for every dollar spent on wellness programs, they find it saves a company over $3 in medical costs and absentee costs. So when people are healthier, they're not calling off as much. Also, every dollar spent on nutrition and physical activity programs, it saves more, $1.17 in medical expenses. Every dollar spent on bike trails, walking paths, saves $3 in health costs. I live in Brea, and I was really excited. They made that path that goes to downtown Brea, kind of starts in the Kramer area, and I see people all the time walking and biking on that path. But so more of that accessibility, because not all areas have safe places to go walk and ride your bike, and that's a problem too for the people that do not live in areas where it's easily accessible. So there's obviously a huge gap between the American culture and the healthy lifestyle, and that's kind of where the problem lies. So most of us don't have to do pretty much any physical activity throughout our day. I know I have to do very little. Moving around throughout my day. So most of us don't have to move around a lot, and we have easily accessible food at the tips of our fingers. Quick convenience foods, anywhere, all the time that we can eat. And it makes it really difficult to stay on track when you constantly have these temptations thrown at you. So fast food, I was talking to Dr. Lawton about fast food. People are busy, so they tend to just grab quick, easy stuff. So we have to find solutions that are also quick and easy. Because if we tell you to spend 3 hours making a healthy soup, when you could have just gone to Taco Bell, you're probably going to choose that option. So I think we have to come up with easy, healthy options for people. Otherwise, it's not going to be realistic for people to do it. And sometimes it's we're busy, and sometimes it's just we don't have the energy, or sometimes you live alone and you don't feel like making a whole meal for just you. And that's can be an issue as well. So our unhealthy lifestyle is expanding to other countries, more McDonald's. Dunkin' Donuts is expanding rapidly in China, and they even have pork donuts now to tempt their palates. It's kind of like the bacon. I'm seeing bacon on everything now. Bacon's the big popular. My 13-year-old loves it on everything. But I even find people that come from other countries, often you'll start seeing them gain weight as they live here longer, right? Because they are quick, convenience, they end up adopting to our lifestyle. They don't rub off on us, we rub off on them, usually is what happens. So. And people are kind of less motivated to lose weight. People want to look good, but in a recent study, most people didn't place a really high value on weight loss if they had to change their lifestyle. Yeah, I want to lose weight, but I don't want to have to change anything in my lifestyle to do it. So that makes it difficult, right? We want it, but we don't really want to make a lot of changes. And a majority said they were not motivated to reduce long-term health risks. So it's usually once somebody has a health problem. I know in my family, my mom and my brother at one point got prediabetes, and both of them lost some weight, and now they don't have prediabetes anymore. But they weren't motivated prior to getting that diagnosis. So that's why I always like when doctors make sure they tell patients, you have prediabetes, this is very serious, you need to take care of it. Because if you act like it's no big deal, most people will probably wait till it's diabetes to do something about it. And our goal would be catching people sooner to make changes. So what's different today? Why is weight management so much harder than even 30 years ago? So people are more obese, more health conditions. People live longer too. Diets have changed. I feel like we have garnish-size vegetables on our plates, and the high-calorie, high-fat food is the major part of our plate, when it should be the other way around. And there's less, like I was talking about, physical activity. People are on more medications, and we accept higher weights. And then a lot of people say, oh, you just need not to eat it. You just need willpower. Just don't do it. And research actually shows willpower runs out over time. So I could be really, really good today and resist all the temptations when I go back to the office and somebody brought donuts, and I love donuts. I could resist it today. But if they keep bringing it in every day, and I walk into work every day, rushed out of my house, I'm hungry, after a couple days, I'll probably crack and I'll probably eat the donut. And research shows that's not me, that's not just my weakness, but it's kind of a general problem that ends up happening. So self-control is a limited commodity that runs low the more you use it. So we can't just rely on willpower. So I'm going to talk a lot about environmental changes. So what are things people can add into their environment and take out of their environment to make it easier for them to stay on track? So an example would be if I ate a really good breakfast at home, or I brought a really healthy breakfast with me to work, it would be easier not to eat the donuts even though I like them, because I know I have something else to eat that I still enjoy, versus I'm hungry and I have nothing with me. Much more likely I'm going to eat those donuts. So those are some of the strategies. People tend to mirror, most of us are probably aware of this, of the eating habits of those around us. I know when I was pregnant, my husband gained weight, and he said, I'm having trouble losing mine more than you know? And so anytime I would eat extra, he wanted to eat extra, and he wasn't pregnant. So we tend to do that, right? If someone else wants something to eat and we're not that hungry, we usually, yeah, okay, I'll have some. So that makes it hard if you're around people that are, eating and snacking and want to get ice cream all the time. It makes it difficult for you. So one of the things we try to do sometimes at my work is, instead of eating over lunch, we'll say, hey, let's walk outside, get out of the building, walk around the building and talk and have a little meeting. And so we're getting some movement, some activity. Or I know people with their kids come home from college and they'll walk and catch up with them instead of always making it around food. And then they could still go out to a nice dinner later, but everything's not around food. They got some physical activity in as well. So our environment is more out of control. Serving sizes are way bigger. We know Costco, right? A muffin is not the same as the muffin size used to. So people will be like, I just had one muffin this morning, or I just had one piece of pizza. Well, what is one muffin and one piece of pizza? Because now it could be the size of 4 or 5 muffins. And that's kind of becoming normal to us in our heads. Larger plates, larger glasses, the little juice, if anyone has the juice glasses that were like 8 ounces, 4 ounces, you never see those anymore. People don't drink out of the small glasses like that. Now our juice is in a big thermos. Higher fat, calorie dense foods, so foods tend to have more fat. More food eaten out of the home, so we tend to eat out a lot more. We don't have control when we eat out. So you think, oh, I'm getting a grilled chicken. And then you're thinking, this grilled chicken tastes so much better than my grilled chicken at home. I wonder why. It's called butter. Usually they put butter all over the chicken and then they grill it, or same with steak. They like to put butter all over steak and then cook it. So there's a lot of hidden calories and fat when you eat out that a lot of times you don't even realize. And the portions tend to be big. It tastes good, so I'm probably gonna eat a lot more because it tastes so good. More snacking. Food is more a part of entertainment, and fewer physical activity. So what we find, working with patients I've been a dietitian for 20 years, and through all the years, I just find that it's really difficult, like I was saying, to see people once a month and really see change. People need a lot of support and a lot of accountability usually to see change. There are those people that can go home. Even some of you today might be like, I'm gonna start eating healthier after that talk, and you're just gonna do it, and you do it successfully. But a lot of people cannot do that, and they need a lot of support and a lot of accountability. So this is just talking about how environment plays a big role. I always like to say, knowing doesn't equal doing. So you could know everything under the sun about nutrition and health, but doing it's really a whole different thing. Like, what are strategies I'm gonna use to do it, and how am I gonna stay on track? Because we know willpower alone isn't gonna keep us on track. People love fad diets, I don't know, for some reason, they're like, just tell me what I could eat and what I could not eat. That's what I wanna know. So many people say that, and I always wonder why do people like that? But I think it's easier. It's more of a cut dry. I don't have to think a lot. Just tell me what to eat, not to eat. So you've probably heard of some of these diets up here. The keto diet, intermittent fasting is very, very popular right now. Paleo diet. And what I find is, different diets will work for different people. But what usually happens is people will pick a diet that's really hard to stick to because it's very restrictive, and all of these are very hard. And then they get sick of it, they can't maintain it anymore, or people are going out and they can't stick to this diet out and going out with their friends, so they break it, and then they just go completely off it. And then they gain that weight back that they lost and more, and they're back to square one again. So I always tell people, whatever you decide to do, make sure you're thinking about long term. If I start getting sick of it, if I want to go out, what am I going to do, and how am I going to maintain this long term? Because you're probably not going to do, some people may, but very rarely people are doing these diets long term for the rest of their life. So maybe you're going to go to a modified version of one of these eventually, but you need help. That's where you usually need a lot of support and help when you're transitioning from a stricter diet to something more normalized. And I think that's where people don't think about that part. They just think about the weight loss part and not the rest of it. Meal replacements, I was actually against these when it was first brought up, when we were developing or gonna have our weight program, HMR, because I thought, it's not realistic, long term. But research does show that meal replacement use increases weight loss results over free choice diet. And it makes sense for a lot of reasons. A lot of people don't want to think about it. They don't want to weigh, measure. They don't want to cook it. So it's quick, easy, simple. Just take it, especially if it tastes good. And it's kind of like our healthy fast food. If it's labor intensive, we're probably not going to do it. So this is our fast food that's healthy. And some people use it only at the beginning stage, and then once we get the weight to the goal, we transition them off. Some people always use some meal replacements because it helps keep them on track, maybe just on busy days, maybe every day. It's just an easy, quick option for them to eat and stay on track. And the most important part is the last bullet on there, transitioning. So transitioning is important in any program. And I'm gonna get back to the meal replacements when I talk about HMR in a second. Benefits of exercise. Exercise, which isn't even on this slide, but they found it was equivalent to taking one antidepressant medication if you exercised every day, which I thought that's pretty amazing. So most people feel like, I don't really feel like doing it, but I don't know many people that come back from walking or doing exercise that say, God, I wish I didn't do that today. Wish I didn't go for that long walk. Usually you're like, I feel good. I'm glad I did it. So it's that getting those shoes on and starting. So I usually tell people, try to treat it like brushing your teeth. Most of us would not dare walk out of the house without brushing our teeth. So tell yourself every day, I'm gonna put my tennis shoes on, and even if it's 5 minutes, I'm gonna do something. And usually once you have the tennis shoes on and you start for 5 minutes, you usually wanna do a little bit more. So it's that starting of it that can, I think, be the most challenging for people, and trying to just incorporate it into every day. Also, when we go on vacation, or something breaks up our routine, often we never get back to that same schedule. So if you go on vacation or you're changing your pattern, you're visiting family over Christmas, try to keep the exercise there. Just say, hey, I'm gonna go for a little walk around your block in the morning, or is there a place we could go walk, even a mall, you know, if you don't wanna be outside if it's not good weather. So trying to incorporate it anywhere you're at so you never completely get out of it. They also find physical activity lowers breast cancer risk by almost 80% in diabetic women. Slashes cardiovascular events for type 2 diabetics, and bone health. We know it's very important for bone health as well. So I thought this was a funny slide. My doctor told me to start an exercise program very gradually. Today I drove past a store that sells sweatpants. Sometimes that's how slow we need to start, right? So some of us are resistant to doing it, but finding something that you somewhat enjoy can make a big difference. So because of all these challenges, we as a medical group, we were really struggling with the weight patients. So HMR is one of the programs that was already at a developed program, started in Boston, and it's a research-based program. So we have to turn in data for all of our patients every month. And that's one of the things we liked about it. It was medically supervised and it was research-based. And it actually, in the last 4 years, got like more national recognition, and it won Best Fast Weight Loss Diet in the country for the last 4 years. And I like the Best Fast Weight Loss, but to me, like one of the things I really like about it that's not really said there is the maintenance phase, or learning how to keep it off, which I feel like is the hardest part for people. So what is HMR? So one of the things I feel like the reason it works is it has a high level of support and accountability. So more than any other program. So if you're in the clinic program, you have to go to class each week, you have to make a call to your coach each week. So that's twice a week, accountability, that's a lot. So if I know I'm not gonna see you for 4 weeks, it's really easy for me this week, if I know I have 4 weeks, to eat really bad this week, because I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna be seeing Susan for a while. I'm good, maybe a week or so before I'll get myself together and start eating healthy. But if I know in 2 days I have to call you, I'm a little more concerned with staying on track. So that gives you a little push, that extra accountability. The quick, easy meal replacement options, we found most patients did not want a lot of work, especially at the beginning. They just wanted to get the chunk of weight off, kind of get motivated by that weight loss before they had to start worry about preparing their food. High volume, low calorie is something I use even not in this program now with any patient I'm working with. Because if you're hungry, you're not gonna stick to any diet. I wouldn't. Being hungry is not a good feeling. So how can we keep you full but keep your calories down, where you're staying at a good weight or losing weight? And that's by having a lot of volume. That would be like a lot of vegetables. In our shakes, we have people put lots of ice in them and put them in the blender. So they become big and thick, even though they're only like 150 calories. So studies have shown it's the volume of the food, not the calories, that cause immediate fullness. So if you add 2 cups of vegetables to your normal meal and take away some of the pasta and meatballs, let's say, that will automatically cut some calories, but you still will probably be equally as full. When you're eating high volume, low calorie, you're not always full for 6, 7, 8 hours like you might be when you go out to a fast food restaurant or out to eat, because you're not eating all that fat. So you have to eat more frequently, which is good. But keeping that in mind, eating more frequently. But if you're not hungry, it's a lot easier to stay on track. Controlling the environment. We call it add-ins and subtractions. So what are things you could add into your environment to keep you on track? So the example was, if I walk into work and I don't have anything to eat, I'm gonna eat whatever anybody else brought in, because I'm hungry now. and I don't have a break for another 2 hours. But if I have my own food that maybe I keep in my drawer or the fridge there that's healthy, it's gonna make it a lot easier for me to stay on track. In California, you could get stuck in traffic very easily. So having even things in your car, for women in your purse, that can make a big difference because you always have something with you so you don't have to stop somewhere, that's unhealthy. Subtracting. Sometimes we don't have control over subtracting, so if a coworker of mine brings donuts in, I can't necessarily control that, but anything I could control. So maybe I don't buy the cookies I love for my kids or my grandkids. I buy the ones I don't really care for because it's gonna make it a lot easier for me to stay on track. Or if you make cookies, maybe you send them home with everybody so they're not sitting at your house and you only keep a couple. So thinking of things you could get rid of. We all have different foods that throw us off track. I'm Italian and I'm a sucker for pizza. I don't even have to be hungry, and if someone has good pizza, I am gonna have a piece. And you may have a different type of food. Maybe yours is sweets or chocolate or something else. So if you have that food around all the time, it's gonna throw you off track. So not to say you could never have it, but if I have pizza 2-3 times a week, that's gonna throw me off track because that's one of my weaknesses. So knowing your weaknesses is helpful so you can make sure you don't have that food around as often. And then building exercise, we call it PA, into daily life. If you can take the stairs, maybe you take the stairs, you park further away, you maybe walk with friends to catch up instead of just eating out, can make a big difference. So phases of a program is phase 1 would be just meal replacements and fruits and vegetables. You don't have to think about it, you're full, highly structured. People usually lose weight very quick. That's how we won the US World News. And then people will say, if they don't cheat off it at all, they can eat extra of the food that's on their plan, but they can't eat anything outside it. If they stick with it, they'll say after a couple weeks, like, the other food doesn't even sound that good. It's weird. Your taste buds turn over. And then I'll have people say, oh, I had a cupcake at a baby shower and I actually felt kind of sick because it's very low fat and they're not used to all that sugar and fat. So it's very interesting to kind of see the change in people, which a lot of times you need, because you're on a cycle of eating a ton of sugar and it's hard to get off it unless you completely, for some people, eliminate it out. And then, so once somebody either is close to their goal weight or just is having trouble staying on the diet now, or is getting just really sick of it, we'll start transitioning them. So we'll gradually start adding in other outside food. Usually just like one meal at a time. We'll be like, okay, for dinner now you're gonna have chicken and some vegetables, but all your other meals are gonna stay, the meal replacements. So little by little, and then we'll kind of stay where it seems to work. We're like, hey, you know what, it's working for you to have meal replacement at either lunch or dinner. Let's just keep that for a while. So trying to keep strategies that are going to keep you on track. And phase 3 would be some kind of long-term management or support that you have in place. Maybe that's an exercise program that you commit to, that you stay in. Maybe it's a support group. Maybe you meet with a dietitian regularly just to keep on track. They're going to weigh you. And this is where once a month might work, because now you kind of have those strategies in place. And believe it or not, we tell people any program you're on, the maintenance phase should be at least a year. And people are like, oh my gosh, a year? But that's to get you through birthdays, holidays, maybe stressors in your life, because those are the times we tend to fall off track. So if you could get through those successfully for a year and learn strategies around it with support, then we feel a little more comfortable that maybe you're gonna be able to maintain the weight now. And how's it different from other programs? One of the things I personally find people can do really well in other programs like Weight Watchers, but there's not as much accountability. So you could just choose to not go to Weight Watchers for a few weeks and then go back. So it's easier to disconnect. So if you're able to manage it yourself a little bit more, I think those programs are good. If you're not, then you need more structure and accountability, more like an HMR. People in Weight Watchers usually keep off an average of about 5% after a year. And usually as time goes on, like after a year, 2 years, the chance of your weight going up is more in those next 3 years. So that's pretty good. That's 5%. That could help decrease your risk for getting diabetes. But HMR, it's about 4 times that. So people lose an average of 65 pounds after 3 years, or 25% of their body weight. So you'll see, I'm gonna pass around the binder of patients before and afters. We get a lot of patients that need to lose 100 pounds. We also get people that just need to lose 20, 30 pounds. But it's that kind of program that can work for someone that has a lot of weight to lose too. And then this kind of gives you, if you do in-clinic program, that's the most accountability. If you do a phone program, that's a little less. If you do it at home, there's an at-home version where you just get the materials and the food at home and you do it yourself. So as the accountability goes down, the weight loss goes down, but you can see it's still pretty decent weight loss for all of the programs. At 12 weeks, people are losing anywhere from 13 to 66 pounds. And 66 pounds would be the most accountability. So to me, this just really shows the more support and accountability people have, the more chance they're gonna be successful and stay on track. And I think people do have to be ready for something like that. Because if you're not ready, then it's hard to stick with it. And one of the things I love is if, like I mentioned before, if you're hungry on this plan, you're allowed to have another shake or meal replacement or hot cereal or more fruits and vegetables. And when we first started this program, we were like, we're gonna tell people they could eat more, and what if they want 5 more? And the studies showed that if you let people do that, they did better, because then they weren't going in their cupboard and grabbing other high-calorie stuff. At least if they were sticking to the low-calorie food, even if they were eating more, they weren't getting as many calories as if they were overeating on the other stuff. So it is important to make sure you're full. And we found it's really important to make sure you're full before events that might be challenging. Like, let's say you're going to a Christmas party and there's gonna be a lot of high-calorie, high-fat food. Making sure you're pretty full walking in. Even if you decide you're gonna eat a little bit, it's gonna be a lot easier to be more careful than if you walk in starving. And I've heard people say, oh, we're going out to a big dinner tonight, so I'm not gonna eat all day. And I always cringe, because what do you think's gonna happen when they walk into that restaurant? They're gonna probably not. Usually you don't care about calories and fat if you're starving. You don't care. So you're gonna walk in there, everything's gonna look super good, you're probably gonna order something really high calorie, high fat, and you're probably gonna eat dessert, and you're gonna eat a lot of it. Because once you're really hungry, you usually overeat. So our goal throughout any day is making sure you don't get to that point. If I get home every day and I'm starving, then maybe I should eat a pack of nuts on my way home or before I get in my car, and that might curb it a little bit. So when I get home, I'm able to make better choices. And this was, so the long-term results for this program were after 3 years, patients were keeping off, 55% of people were keeping off 65 pounds, or 25% of their body weight, which is pretty impressive, because the gold standard in the weight industry is 5%. So pretty intense. And these were people that did phase 2. We get some people that insist, no, I'm good now, I lost the weight, and then a lot of times we'll see them back because they never did phase 2. They didn't learn how to keep it off. So that part of it's really important. Most people, 30% medications initially were eliminated. So that's pretty impressive, and 85% of people had at least one reduction in a medical risk factor. And we do medical risk screenings at the beginning and the end of the program. Because that's really, it's the HMR is health management program. So that's really what it's about, is health management. And even if people don't have health problems yet, our goal is we're preventing them for later. And people always talk about the costs, and usually food is a wash on a meal replacement program because it's instead of your other food. So like $10 to $15 a day, usually most of us are spending more than that. But this program is $30 a week, and then you may be medically supervised. If you're like diabetic or you go on a really strict plan, you have to pay for medical supervision in the beginning. Phase 2, all that medical supervision part goes away. And as I talk about the last couple success stories, I have a binder I'm going to pass around. You can pass it to the table behind you when you're done. But it has some of our patients, and I always think it's just motivating to see people that have actually just really turned around their lifestyle. So I'll just pass that around, and whoever wants to start leafing through it. So this is one of our patients, and he lost 150 pounds. He actually spoke. I spoke at St. Jude Hospital for there's a healthcare professional talk every year. It's mostly nurses, and they get education points towards their license, and it was all on diabetes. So I always ask, hey, can we bring a successful patient in to like motivate healthcare professionals to refer, to motivate people? And this patient agreed to come, and he actually still has a support dog because he was on 5 insulin shots. And now he's on no insulin at all. And he was saying, I don't even need this support dog now, and this dog wants to go with me everywhere, and he had the dog at the conference. But it's pretty amazing that he doesn't need 1 shot now because of his weight loss. And his wife was saying, yeah, we were paying a lot more for medications before, but now I feel like I am spending on lots of vegetables. She said they spend a lot more money on fruits and vegetables, which, okay, that seems like a good swap, right? So pretty dramatic, and he went off also his oral diabetes and his hypertension medications. He looks like really a different person. So he came and actually told his story. This is another patient that lost 107 pounds. Her blood sugar wasn't as high, but she was also just diabetic, and just in that diabetic range. Now she's lower than most people, including me. Her blood sugar is like very, very low. Her A1C is 4.9. Her blood pressure dropped, and she eliminated one of her diabetes meds. The other one decreased, and she was saying that they may take her off that one at the next appointment. In most of these people, one of the biggest trends is the activity level is a big difference. They're doing a lot more activity, and then also they'll say they eat a lot more fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables are a way bigger part of their life than they were before. So some of the conclusions are extra weight is a major cause of disease and death, and the problem's getting worse. People are struggling to fight this environment that it doesn't really support weight loss or weight management. And there's not a one-size-fits-all approach, really. But so we try to assess with patients, like what are some of your issues? What have you tried before? To kind of see what they need. And we find a lot of people need a lot more support and accountability than they're getting. Dr. Lawton asked how many people are in the program. So at our St. Jude site, we have 200 people. We just opened a site in Orange, and now Providence, actually, who we merged, St. Joseph merged with, decided they wanted to do this program because of all the research. So they opened numerous clinics in Spokane and Everett. So these programs are opening up more across our state, and these programs are across the country. Because they find, okay, this is going to help us with a lot of these other medical problems that we're struggling with patients. It's not for everybody. So for people that maybe it's not the right fit for, typically we'll try to find something else that is going to work for them. But like I said, the phase 2, the maintenance, the keeping it off, is always, as soon as somebody tells me, hey, I'm doing keto, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, okay, if you feel like it's working, you're liking it, but what are you gonna do once you get tired of it? What are you gonna do when you go somewhere and you wanna eat some carbs? So really thinking long-term, I think, is really important, and making sure they're working with someone during that time can make a really big difference. So now I'll open it up if anybody has any questions.
Do you follow people after they've lost the weight?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we do, like the study we did, we followed them 3 years later. So we keep them in our database, and we will periodically pool everybody that finished 3 years ago. How are they doing now? Because that's a big part of it. We don't really want to just have them lose a chunk of weight. Best fast weight loss diet, I lost a chunk of weight and everybody gained it back a year later. That's not worth it, really.
So work with them, because that's my biggest problem. I don't want to be on a diet. The diet I'm on, I lose weight and then I gain more.
Okay, so she said every diet she's on, she loses weight but then gains back more. So that's the common problem, I would say. Most people will lose it, but then they don't know how to keep it off. So I would suggest seeing a dietitian so you could learn how to long-term strategy. And I find people are too strict. Like they think in order to lose weight, I have to never touch a carb again. I have to never eat out again. And if you have that strict of rules on yourself, you're probably honestly not going to stick with it long-term. So trying to come up with, well, what is going to happen if I want to eat? out, or if I want to have a carb, how can I do that and still not completely go off track? And that's where working with somebody on strategies can help. We also have a social worker as part of our team that has a psychology background, and she does a class called Mind Skills, and she works with people on like looking at your triggers, your stress triggers, and your eating, because there's a lot of correlation there, where a lot of times you know what to do, but that's how you cope with stress or anger or different issues going on. So trying to catch those, like what are some of my unhealthy patterns or habits, and what are some of the things I could do about it, can make a big difference.
Well, is that part of the program?
Yeah, she does speak, she does sessions as part of the HMR weight program.
You've lost your weight, you're still working with people to maintain
That's key.
long-term.
That's key, yep. So she said after you've lost the weight, should you still be working with these people long term? Yeah, some people get to the point where they don't feel like they need it anymore. Some people we've had in the program for many, many years in phase 2, because they feel like if I go off it, I'm gonna fall off track, and that's okay too, you know? I always think of it like a skill, any skill. You're learning a skill to play an instrument, you have to show up for the lessons. It's the same with weight management. And I think we should just be able to manage it on their own. But in our culture, it's really not that easy because of our environment. So most people need that skill and that support to stay on track. Any other questions?
Could you may have touched on this, but is there any, the question always comes up about insurance coverage for this kind of program, and how is it paid for, and is there any insurance help?
Insurance, it's a cash-based program for us, but some patients will bill their insurance company. We give them the correct paperwork. They never cover the food, because food is food. But sometimes they will cover the classes and the medical supervision part. If a patient, most of our patients are within our medical group, they could get their labs through their own doctor. So there's ways to make it a lot more reasonable. We tell them this is what you're gonna need, and the doctor will order it for them. A lot of the doctors are aware of our program. So there are ways around that, but it's not at the point where, yes, we know all Blue Shield PPOs will cover it. We're not at that point yet.
If your insurance won't, what is the cost?
It's $30 a week for when you're in the phase 1 part of the program, or it's $120 a month. And the food is about $10 to $15 a day. Like I said, usually that's a wash because you're not buying other food except fruits and vegetables if you're on that plan. And the medical supervision could be up to $25, $30 a week, depending on your level. At the beginning, you'll get clearance, and then we'll let you know if you even are medically supervised or not. All diabetics are medically supervised on it. But if you don't have diabetes and you choose the plan with fruits and vegetables, there's usually no medical supervision after the initial clearance. We do communicate with your doctor, send them a note saying you're starting the program, what it is, how to contact us, and then we follow up on your results to the doctor too. So.
On the food replacement, is that like a liquid diet, or is it?
Oh yeah, good question. It's shakes, so there's chocolate and vanilla shakes, and then there's about 17 different entrees. They're vacuum sealed. That's what I like about them. I could just throw them in my drawer if I'm busy, and then they just go in the microwave for a minute. And you could combine those with vegetables. So there's a bunch of different variety of the meals, the entrees, and then there's a multi-grain cereal, there's a hot soup. So the typical plan is a minimum of 3 shakes every day, 2 meals, and 5, if you're on the fruits and veggies, 5 cups of fruits and veggies. If you're not, it's a minimum of 3 shakes and 2 entrees. Everybody gets to the fruits and veggies eventually. So if you start on the plan that's just meal replacements, the first thing we're gonna add back is the 5 cups of fruits and veggies, right? Because that's what we want you bulking up on. So most people feel like it's a lot of food. They'll feel like, oh wow, this is quite a bit of food.
Then are the entrees like a meat or?
Yeah, there's different ones. It's like chicken and rice. There's chicken enchiladas. There's pasta vajol. There's chicken pasta parmesan. Bunch of different types of foods. There's vegetarian ones too, for people that are vegetarian. One of the reasons why we liked it was the food tastes really good. Like I know some programs, it's like really not tasty. And I feel like that will, obviously it's hard to do it at all if it's not good. So you could buy the food separately. Like if some people will just want to try it before they commit to a program. In our orientations that we have, free orientations, just that tells you about the program, we do sample the food so people can try some stuff and make sure they like it. But yeah, in our Fullerton clinic, which is right next to St. Jude Hospital, you could go in there and say, what's the best sellers? I want to try some stuff. And and see if you like it. Some people that don't feel like they need a full program will just use the food for support or quick busy days to keep them on track. I actually just use it when I'm super busy and I need something really quick. I'll pull mine out and eat it because it's fast and easy. So that's a good question.
Are there commercially available this type of meal that you recommend that are not part of your program?
Oh, just like other meal replacements?
Yeah, I mean, are there meal replacements that are commercially available that do the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's like Lean Cuisine and Healthy Choice that you could buy. Some of those that are frozen can be kind of high in sodium, but I feel like those, if you're using those instead of going out to eat and you combine those with like vegetables, you're still saving a ton of calories. Probably your everything, your sodium, your fat is way lower. So you don't want to go like necessarily the Marie Callender's all the time type because those are high calorie. But if you go for the healthy, like Smart Ones, Lean Cuisine, Healthy Choice, those can work to balance out. You just want to make sure after you eat it, you feel full. If you find I ate it and I was like starving, that's probably not a good choice. Or maybe you didn't add enough vegetables to it. 2 cups of vegetables at lunch and dinner is a good strategy because it really bulks up your meal without adding a lot of calories. And if you don't like vegetables, maybe try a vegetable you haven't tried or try it prepared differently. I find people will say they don't like vegetables, but they only had canned green beans growing up and they think green beans are disgusting now. When I'm like, well, why don't you try sauteing them with some, fresh garlic and onion, and then they're like, oh yeah, it was good. So, sometimes we have these old beliefs from when we were younger and things we've had, and we need to try things, maybe in a different way.
On your $30 a week, how many meals is that? Is like
$30 a week is for the class and coaching, but the food is $10 to $15 a day, which includes 3 shakes a day and 2 entrees. We always have people buy extra, because let's say you're hungry, and just like even if you're not on a weight program, you have days you're not as hungry and days you're super hungry. So you can have extra, so we always want you to have extras around your house, at work, so that if you get tempted, you have something you could grab and eat.
Can you start this at any point, or do you have to wait until a class starts?
Oh yeah, we have rolling enrollment. She asked if you could start the program at any point or you have to wait till a certain time to start. We have what's called rolling enrollment, so once you do your clearance and come to the orientation, you could start immediately, yeah. Because we find if you're ready today and you have to wait 2 months, you might not be ready in 2 months or 1 month. So I feel like with weight management, it's urgent. Like if we need to get you in if you're feeling ready right now, so we try to make that happen after you come to the orientation. But we want everyone to come to the orientation because that will really tell you, is this something I want to do or not? And if somebody has, let's say you're like, I want to do it, but I'm going on vacation over Thanksgiving for a week and I can't stick to the diet, then I would say don't start it till after that. Because if you're off it for a week, right after you start, you're not getting the most out of your money. You want to make sure you're really committing for that period of time, that you're in phase 1.
So, in these pictures,
Yeah.
the one where it's improved, is that, did they get to phase 3, or is it?
No, those were all phase 2. Some of them could have done 3, but most people it's just phase 2. They went to phase 2 and then we followed up with them 3 years after they completed the program. Well, this wasn't even always 3 years. Some of these people just kind of lost the weight or finished the program. The study was 3 years, but this one we included just anyone we were able to get the before and after picture for. So some of them are actually still even in trying to lose still, yeah. Like they're not all at their goal weight yet. But it's nice that these people let us share their success stories, because I always feel like it's so much more powerful being able to see them, and even better when I get to have them speak. It motivates other people, because it's not, you know, a lot of people feel like I don't think I can do it, but then when they hear another patient saying I did it and I was scared and I didn't think I could do it, now I feel a lot better. It kind of motivates everybody else, I think, too. So my cards are back there, the flyers. And I'm still here if you have any questions you didn't want to say out loud. I'll be here for a few minutes. Thank you.